On April 19, 1995, at 9:02 a.m., America stopped. This presentation will explore the Oklahoma City bombing, not just what happened, but how this crisis exposed deep vulnerabilities in our emergency preparedness, communication systems, and security infrastructure. We'll examine the timeline, the response, the leadership, and the lessons learned, many of which are still shaping how we approach crisis management today.
The Murrah building was a melting pot. It was a cross-section of America. That morning, I sat down at my desk. Then everything changed.
Smoke, debris, part of the building has been blown away.
We're getting reports of numerous fatalities.
Hard to believe we are looking at our own backyard.
What you just saw were the final moments before and after 9:02 a.m. on April 19, 1995, when a truck bomb tore through the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in downtown Oklahoma City. 168 lives were lost, including 19 children. More than 680 others were injured. A city was left in chaos, and a nation in shock. This event not only caused unimaginable loss and destruction, but it also exposed critical vulnerabilities in our emergency preparedness and response systems. From a crisis management perspective, it became a pivotal case study in exposing weakness in emergency response systems, prompting major shifts in federal policy and national security strategy, and serving as a foundational case study in public sector crisis coordination. It became the day crisis management was redefined. To fully understand how the Oklahoma City bombing may have been prevented, we need to take a look at the timeline of events leading up to the attack. These are not just random facts. They show the planning, ideology, and warning signs that preceded the bombing. In 1991 to 1992, Timothy McVeigh served in the U.S. Army during the Gulf War. He was a decorated soldier, but after returning home, he became increasingly disillusioned with the federal government. In 1992, the Ruby Ridge standoff between the FBI and a survivalist family further deepened his anger. By April 1993, the Waco siege became a turning point for him. McVeigh was outraged and blamed the government entirely. He traveled to Waco during the siege and even distributed anti-government leaflets there. In late 1993, McVeigh was living with Terry Nichols in Michigan. During this time, he began immersing himself in militia circles and became obsessed with the Turner Diaries, a novel depicting a violent revolution against the federal government. This book reinforced his views, and it gave him a blueprint for the bombing. By fall 1994, McVeigh had made his decision. He would attack the government. He identified the Alfred P. Murrah building because it housed multiple federal agencies, including the ATF, the same agency involved in Waco. On September 30th, he leased a storage unit to hide bomb-making components. Over the next few months, he gathered ammonium nitrate fertilizer and fuel oil. On April 14, 1995, using the alias Robert Kling, he rented a Ryder truck. From April 16th to the 18th, he and Nichols loaded nearly 5,000 pounds of explosives into the Ryder truck. McVeigh writes his anti-government manifesto and drives from Kansas to Oklahoma City. Then, on April 19th, at 9:02 a.m., McVeigh parks the truck in front of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building and detonates the bomb. What if I told you this bombing could have been prevented? When we step back and examine McVeigh's actions, we can see that there are several red flags, each one signaling danger, yet none were effectively acted upon. McVeigh was openly vocal about his anti-government beliefs. He wasn't hiding his ideology. He attended gun shows, distributed extremist literature, and engaged with like-minded individuals. His radicalization wasn't sudden or hidden. It was unfolding in plain sight. He and Terry Nichols made large and suspicious purchases of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, fuel oil, and other bomb-making materials. These were bought in bulk across different states, but without a coordinated tracking system, these transactions went under the radar. McVeigh had also known connections to militia groups in Michigan, groups that were already on the fringes of anti-government sentiment. Lastly, he used a fake identity to rent the Ryder truck used in the bombing. Gaps in intelligence sharing allowed these activities to go unnoticed and unchallenged. From a crisis management perspective, this phase highlights the importance of early threat detection. There was no unified intelligence sharing mechanism between federal, state, and local agencies. The need for stronger interagency coordination. Warning signs existed, but they lived in silos. No one agency had the full picture. And the consequences of failing to monitor domestic extremism. While foreign terrorism dominated attention at the time, the threat at home was growing quietly and dangerously. The real failure was not recognizing or connecting the dots. The key takeaway is crisis prevention begins with awareness, communication, and collaboration. What you see here is the Mira building, before and after the bombing. One moment, a functional federal office, the next, a collapsed structure with hundreds of people trapped, injured, or gone. This visual tells the story of how quickly a crisis can unfold and how every second matters from that moment on. The Ryder truck packed with 4,800 pounds of explosives detonated, and the force of the explosion ripped through 1/3 of the structure. The blast wave shattered the building's windows, collapsed floors, and left behind a scene of overwhelming devastation. Victims ranged from 3 months to 73 years old, including 3 pregnant women. The damage wasn't limited to the Mira building. More than 300 surrounding buildings were damaged, some beyond repair. Debris was scattered across a 16-block radius, making emergency access difficult and hazardous. Glass was shattered in 28 buildings, and 86 cars were destroyed. The explosion caused an estimated $652 million worth of damage. First responders faced a scene of utter chaos, fires, structural collapse, and a high volume of casualties. Communication systems were overwhelmed, and initial reports were flooded with confusion. At first, no one knew if it was an act of foreign terrorism or a domestic attack. Early on, the FBI and law enforcement believed the bombing might be linked to international terrorism, specifically Middle Eastern groups, due to the scale of the attack and the tactics used. This assumption misdirected investigative efforts and delayed the pursuit of the actual suspect, Timothy McVeigh, a domestic terrorist.
We had an explosion downtown. We've had an explosion. We need help. Adam 24 is en route. 58's en route. 48's en route.
This is him, sir.
Yeah, we need an ambulance.
Is this at the explosion?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We're on the way.
The whole front of the federal building is gone. All floors to the roof. You have numerous high-rise buildings involved in this. Where's the folks? We need to set up command by division. We're going to have numerous calls for EMS.
He didn't know where to begin. People running up to the ambulance, beating on the hood. Everybody's covered with blood.
I've got 3 patients that are in critical condition. I need some ambulances here. I got some critically hurt people.
We have all the squads in town responding downtown.
Those were the first moments of chaos. 911 calls, panicked voices, and first responders mobilizing with no idea what they were walking into. Within minutes of the explosion, Oklahoma City's firefighters, paramedics, and police officers were on the scene. Despite unstable debris and the very real threat of additional collapses, they immediately began pulling survivors from the rubble. The situation quickly overwhelmed the city's emergency medical infrastructure. Hospitals were not prepared for the volume of patients pouring in, yet doctors, nurses, and support staff stepped up. They activated mass casualty protocols and worked around the clock to triage and save as many lives as possible. What stands out the most in this phase is the remarkable coordination across local, state, and federal levels. Search and rescue teams were dispatched, the National Guard was deployed, and law enforcement agencies began organizing perimeter control and victim support logistics. And the community stepped in. Thousands of Oklahomans immediately lined up to donate blood. Restaurants delivered meals, neighbors offered shelter, and volunteers distributed blankets, water, and comfort wherever they could. What made this possible was preparation. The summer before the bombing, Oklahoma City first responders had received training at the Emergency Management Institute in Emmitsburg, Maryland, and were well versed in the Incident Command System, otherwise known as ICS, a national framework for multi-agency response in the wake of a disaster. That training allowed them to establish a coordinated command structure and integrate seamlessly with state and federal responders. Even amid confusion and overwhelming need, the early hours of this crisis demonstrated that resilience, coordination, and courage save lives. And for crisis managers, it served as a crucial reminder and a model of what preparedness truly looks like. Not just a plan, but people trained and ready to act. In this photo, firefighter Chris Fields carries the body of 1-year-old Bailey Ellman, one of the 19 children killed in the bombing. This image became a symbol, not just of tragedy, but of the urgency, sacrifice, and emotional weight carried by every first responder that day. In the hours after the bombing, the crisis entered its most critical phase: search and rescue. FEMA quickly deployed urban search and rescue teams, integrating with local fire and EMS units to form a coordinated effort. This response wasn't improvised. It followed established emergency response frameworks such as the ICS, which helped bring structure to chaos. Despite the threat of secondary collapses, responders worked around the clock and risked their lives to dig through unstable debris piles, sometimes with bare hands or makeshift tools. Each survivor was a testament to the bravery and perseverance of these teams. The last survivor of the Oklahoma City bombing, a 15-year-old girl, was rescued around 7 p.m. the evening of the attack. But crisis management isn't just physical, it's also emotional. Leaders recognized early on the need for mental health support. Counselors and chaplains were embedded into rescue centers to care for traumatized survivors, responders, and grieving families. This became a defining model for integrating behavioral health into emergency operations. By 1995, the area was cleared, but the emotional recovery had only just begun. The recovery phase lasted for months, and for some even years. Site clearance wasn't just about debris. It was about collecting evidence, supporting families, and preparing for memorialization. From a crisis management perspective, this phase highlights the importance of sustained, multi-agency coordination, responder safety protocols, emotional care, and the ability to manage public and media expectations during a long recovery. In the immediate aftermath of the bombing, confusion gripped both the public and law enforcement. Many assumed it was a foreign terrorist attack, possibly from the Middle East, because the idea that this level of devastation could come from a U.S. citizen seemed unthinkable at the time. While speculation ran wild, the FBI and ATF quickly launched the Oak Bomb Task Force, an interagency collaboration involving federal, state, and local law enforcement. The FBI led the investigation, working closely with the ATF, U.S. Marshals Service, Secret Service, Oklahoma law enforcement, and other agencies. This would become one of the largest criminal investigations in U.S. history. What do you think led to the first arrest in this investigation? A wiretap? A confidential informant? Perhaps surveillance? Nope. It was a missing license plate. In one of the most remarkable twists in crisis investigation history, the first break in the case didn't come from high-level intelligence, but from a routine traffic stop. Just 90 minutes after the bombing, Oklahoma State Trooper Charlie Hanger pulled over a yellow Mercury Marquis. The driver, Timothy McVeigh, was also carrying an unregistered concealed firearm. At the time, no one connected him to the bombing, and he was arrested on weapons charges and booked into jail like any other suspect. Only later, through forensic evidence, eyewitness accounts, and rental records, did investigators link McVeigh to the Ryder truck used in the bombing. That single observation by Trooper Hanger became the thread that unraveled the entire case. Just a few days later, Terry Nichols was arrested as McVeigh's co-conspirator. This moment highlights a critical truth in crisis management and investigations. Sometimes it's the smallest detail, a license plate, that breaks open the biggest case. It also underscores the importance of interagency communication, forensic collaboration, and being ready to act on information quickly and decisively during a national emergency. Leadership during a crisis is more than operational decisions. It's about reassurance, visibility, and action. Shortly after the bombing, President Bill Clinton addressed the nation, offering a message of unity, empathy, and resolve.
Today our nation joins with you in grief. We mourn with you. We share your hope against hope that some may still survive. We thank all those who have worked so heroically to save lives and to solve this crime. Those here in Oklahoma and those who are all across this great land, and many who left their own lives to come here to work hand in hand with you. We pledge to do all we can to help you heal the injured, to rebuild this city, and to bring to justice those who did this evil. You have lost too much, but you have not lost everything. And you have certainly not lost America. For we will stand with you for as many tomorrows as it takes.
His speech helped set a calm and empathetic tone, showing victims that they weren't alone and demonstrating that the federal government was fully engaged. At the federal level, agencies quickly stepped in to provide emergency funding, victim compensation, and disaster assistance. Meanwhile, local and state leaders like Oklahoma Governor Frank Keating and Mayor Ron Norick showed tremendous strength, helping guide the city through trauma, grief, and early rebuilding. The tragedy also spurred legislative change. In 1996, Congress passed the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, expanding tools for law enforcement and tightening the legal timeline for appeals in capital cases involving terrorism. But more broadly, this event redefined what domestic terrorism looks like and how we prepare for it. The Oklahoma City attack forced leaders to rethink preparedness and how we respond to threats from within. It became a case study in the power of decisive, compassionate leadership and the need for policy to evolve alongside emerging threats. The human cost of the Oklahoma City bombing can't be fully captured in numbers. It's reflected in the lives forever changed. Among the victims were federal workers, veterans, parents, and 19 children who had just been dropped off at daycare. Survivors and first responders faced lifelong trauma and emotional pain. Many developed PTSD, while others struggled with survivor's guilt or the weight of what they saw during rescue efforts. And yet, this tragedy sparked something powerful. The Oklahoma City community united in ways no one could have predicted. Strangers offered shelter, volunteers became family, a devastated city came together to take care of its own. The world took notice, and Oklahoma became a symbol of resilience, grace, and unity in the face of horror. In the years that followed, the city built the Oklahoma City National Memorial, a space for reflection, healing, and remembrance. At its center stands the survivor tree, as pictured in the background of this slide, a 100-year-old American elm that withstood the blast. It has become a symbol of strength, growth, and hope. Nearby, the field of empty chairs provides a powerful visual tribute. Every chair bears the name of someone lost that day, and the smaller chairs represent children. They're arranged in 9 rows, one for each floor of the Mira building, placed where each person would have been when the bomb went off. The memorial stands in remembrance and as a living lesson in resilience. As we close this presentation, we shift from what happened to what we've learned, and how those lessons continue to shape modern crisis management. First, the bombing showed the critical importance of early threat detection. The warnings were there. We missed them. This highlighted a key failure in interagency intelligence sharing and the need for better awareness of domestic extremist threats. Second, the response demonstrated the value of multi-agency coordination, but that coordination only worked because of prior training. The Incident Command System provided a structure that allowed local, state, and federal responders to collaborate effectively. The ICS system is now mandatory under the Federal Response Plan and used in emergencies across the country. Third, crisis communication played a pivotal role. Early confusion about the source of the attack led to speculation and panic. We now understand that clear, timely, and coordinated messaging is essential, not just to inform the public, but to build trust and stabilize the response environment. Fourth, the event showed us the power of community resilience. Volunteers, neighbors, and businesses stepped in to fill gaps no federal plan could cover. It was a reminder that recovery isn't just a policy process. It's people helping people in moments of extraordinary need. Finally, the bombing led to lasting changes in national policy. The Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, passed in 1996, reshaped how we investigate, prosecute, and prevent terrorism. From a crisis management view, this tragedy was a turning point. It showed us the price of missed warnings, the strength of preparation, and the lasting impact of collaboration and compassion. From tragedy came training, from heartbreak came policy, and from the rubble rose one of the most important lessons in modern crisis management. What happened on April 19, 1995 at 9:02 a.m. changed a city, but what happened after defined a nation.